one of the things in Enoch that is talked about is that, and it's also mentioned in the book of Genesis, that there were giants that were created as a result of this fall between the B'nai Elohim taking the daughters of men. Giants were created. And when these
are referred to as elephants, don't you think that that was what we were looking at? Let me just look at it real quick here. Just so
talking about
the
elephants in here. Yeah.
It
talking
was
about the giants.
the elephants. Mm-hmm.
And when you see this kind of thing, so and I just want to talk about what happened with these giants, because I think there's something here. But basically what happened is, between the two classes, you had these B'nai Elohim who were empowered to, after the cataclysm that had taken place, which may have been a pole shift, that was to end that prior epic and a new epic beginning, right? Now, is there evidence for this epic? Yeah, it is. And it's in the book of Revelation, because it says, I am Yahuah, the Aleph and the Tav, the first and the last, the beginning and the end, who was in the prior epic, who is in this epic, and who is to come in the next epic, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And in 93:12, Enoch, we see the sevenfold doctrine of his whole creation being given,
right?
Which tells you that the earth may be in a 7,000-year cycle where it resets every 7,000 years. And there's basically a renewed heaven and earth. And remember, it's not a new, and see, this is a lot of people like, well, the whole earth is going to be burned up in fire, and that's going to be it. And then there's going to be a whole new heaven and earth and a whole new Jerusalem. The word there for new in the Hebrew would be chodesh or chadash, renewed. Not brand new, renewed. A renewed heaven and a renewed earth. And so there was a renewed earth in the epic that brought Adam into bear. But there were survivors from the prior epic, the B'nai Elohim, who were empowered to watch over and be messengers too. But I think this is what happened. You know, we have this interesting passage in Leviticus 18, where you have all these sexual sins. You know, don't marry your aunt, don't marry your first cousin, don't marry your mother-in-law, don't marry your brother-in-law, you know, whatever it might be, right? But they have all these restrictions. And then all of a sudden, don't pass your children through to Molech. What? Right? What are you talking about? Well, Molech, right? Spelled like Malak.
Uh-huh.
Don't pass your children through to a watcher, to a messenger. Don't give your children to a messenger. All right. Now we know that when you deal with something like a snake or an alligator or a sturgeon, that these are animals that never stop growing.
Right.
Right. They just keep increasing in size every year. So you can imagine if they live to be 500 years, how big they might get.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, you've seen some pictures of pythons that are just like, right. I mean, like, no way am I going into that jungle. Right.
Right.
With a snake that big, right.
And the depth of the sea creatures. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Some big ones, right. That fortunately we haven't had the pleasure of seeing. Yes. But so when you talk about this idea that there is a DNA out there that did not terminate growth, our growth terminates, right? We get to a certain height. That's the end of it. We're not going to get any taller for the rest of our life. But they may have added a third strand of DNA.
Right.
A messenger RNA, if you will. And this messenger RNA may have been taken from the serpent. Mm-hmm. And because the serpent had the ability to keep right on growing. And so what caused the giants in the earth was this messenger RNA. So it says there were giants in the earth in those days, right? We know Goliath was a giant. We know Aga Bashan was a giant. And some of the descriptions inside of Enoch talks about these enormous giants, because, there was no giant that could be that tall, because they're trying to measure the cubit, you know, Noah's cubit from the elbow to the tip of the fingers. Right. But Enoch's cubit was the hand, the width of the hand. Right?
Yeah, I was listening to you explain something on that on one of your Radio Free Alaska shows, where you're talking about the Temple of Ezekiel, which I found fascinating, that maybe that was Herod's temple when we start measuring that cubit. Yeah.
Yep.
That makes
sense. If you used Noah's cubit for Ezekiel's temple, the wall of the temple would encompass about 2/3 of Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think that's right. And he tells you that the cubit is a hand width in Ezekiel. And all of a sudden, when you go back to that hand width, gee, now all of a sudden the whole temple makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And this is what Herod built. And so, and they also practice the animal sacrifice in accord with Ezekiel, not in accord with Moshe. And again, another important point, because the rabbis wanted to get rid of Ezekiel, but they couldn't because of the practices and the temple that they had built. They had to keep it. So they put it out of order.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, but yeah, when you see that kind of a construction, that kind of a cubit, these giants were not as big as you think, but they were big enough to leave a very curious record. Now, there's all kinds of records, particularly in the geoglyphs of giants.
Mhm.
When you see these, you can just pull it up on Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to use, whatever search engine you want to use. But when you pull up something on a search engine and ask, giants' faces in the earth as geoglyphs or giants in geoglyphs,
Cool.
there's hundreds of photos of the faces of giants caught in what do you call it? They're caught in mountains. They're frozen in the ground, right? And literally hundreds of them, hundreds, and some of them are just mind-boggling. You can clearly see them lying down. You can see them sitting back. You can see them with terror on their face. You can see just all kinds of things in this record of the giants. And some people say that when you look at the big mesas in Arizona, that those were trees, right? They look like trees that had been hewn or been broken off, these big mesas. And so the world was a different place. It was a different place. We don't understand it. We didn't understand it. And we still don't understand it. But Enoch is dealing with all this. So if you could see that what takes place is you have this two class of people. You have the B'nai Elohim were created in the image and likeness of Yah. And one part of them elects to take on serpent DNA. How they did it, I don't know. But we do know that they had created chimeras, half horse, half man, half goat, half man, half bird, half man, half jackal, half man, on and on, half cat, half man. All of these things came about. And the Book of Giants, right? The Book of Giants found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You can't ignore the Book of Giants. How do you ignore it when it's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls? How do you ignore that book?
And Sefer hasn't published that one yet, have you?
Yeah, well, the reason we haven't published that one is because it's very much a fragment.
Okay.
And so the fragment has been filled in by people, but it's their opinion about what's in there, right?
Right.
Because it's very fragmented. But nonetheless, there is a Book of Giants, and it's a lamentation, quite frankly. I was expecting to read something like, "We're going to beat you up, kid, because we're big." And that's not what it says. It says they recognize that they have no salvation because of the sins of their father, and they're lamenting it. And this also is the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh has the same kind of, and these two are tied together, the Book of Giants and the Epic of Gilgamesh. They're tied, and Gilgamesh too was a giant. So when you look at what happened, somehow they managed to cross the genome. And I don't know if they had wisdom that they had perfected over 3,000 years, or if they stumbled onto something we don't know. We don't yet know how they did it. But they crossed the genome. We weren't able to do that until the 1990s. Could we cross the genome? We can now do it.
Right.
But they couldn't do that. And when they did, a class of people began to rise up that didn't stop growing. So everybody turns 21, and we're all 5'10". Then we turn 25. I'm 5'10". This guy is 6'3". Then we turn 31. I'm 5'10". He's 7'5".
Wow.
We turn 41. I'm 5'10". He's 8'9". Right? He keeps right on growing and growing and growing.
Because he's a hybrid?
Yeah, hybrid. Triple strand DNA. And they took on the DNA of the serpent, and the aspect of that DNA that didn't stop is the aspect of the DNA that would allow them to keep growing and to not terminate growth, like a serpent, like a python.
Yeah.
And so as a result, they got to a point where, and this is where the Civil War broke out, this group of people who had the hybrid DNA became cannibals. They were eating human beings. And so this gigantic civil war breaks up between Osiris and Seth, if you will, or whatever name you want to put to it. But the sons of men kicked out the giants. They defeated the giants, and a third of these people fell. A third of the people of the Beni Elohim fell. They fell into this trap. This is what every Christian believes, that a third of the angels fell.
Right.
They were being led by Satan, and a third of the angels fell. They all believe this, right?
Right.
And when you scratch that belief, you find that they believe that the angels existed before mankind was born.
Right.
Am I right about this?
Yeah.
It's a common Christian belief, but when you look at it closer, these weren't angels with little wings on them. These were messengers, and these messengers, a third of them fell, and they fell into the beguiling of the serpent. And I say to you that may have been a corrupted DNA that caused them to become giants.
Do you think that this is what the parable of the seed that was sown into the field? Why did you sow tares? Why would you sow tares? And it was done while men slept, right? Was it Adam not guarding the garden? Is this what we're talking about? I mean, it's an interesting concept here.
Well, again, the serpent beguiled Yahuah.
Right.
Now, when you talk, and of course, in Hanok says that was Gadriel that did that. And Gadriel was who? He was a fallen one. He was a watcher who was assigned to watch over them and fell. And so as a consequence, you can see that he was, when they're calling him the serpent, was he actually Nakash? No, but he had that serpent DNA, so they were calling him the serpent. And if you recall, we've got this huge competing ideology, if you will, that comes up with the worship of the serpent, the Asclepius. Even Moshe was a part of that worship, putting the serpent on the pole.
Yeah.
When he was told to put a seraph on a banner, he put a serpent on the pole, right? The Asclepius. Right. And so all of these things become very interesting in the record. But with the rise of the tares are a different DNA than the wheat. They look pretty similar.
Yeah.
But when they get to a full-blown ripeness, the wheat, the head falls over and the tare stands straight up, right? And the tares are going to be harvested. Now, also, these corrupted DNA are called the bastards in Enoch. It's not somebody born out of wedlock that is the bastard. The bastard is someone who is as a result of the union between a fallen watcher and a daughter of Adam. That's what the true definition is. Okay. And so when we understand that, and I can tell you, they're still with us today.